Do you know what you're eating? Do you know what GMOs are? Most people believe or have a misconception of what GMOs are, but there is little statistics to show that they are truly harmful to your body. During the 70s and the 80s, the biotechnology was so new that they had more of an adverse effect than they do now present day. GMOs are when the genes of plants and animals and microorganisms that have been manipulated to acquire traits that are not natural to their breed. Two of the main distributors of food and fish in the Corpus Christi area that we interviewed are JB Produce and Groomer Seafood Company.
Most of our stuff, most of our clientele are Mexican food restaurants. So there's two other produce companies in Corpus, and we kind of got the market corner of those guys. So all the basic stuff, tomatoes, onions, potatoes, the eggs, anything that you would, if you go to a Mexican food restaurant and eat, that's the stuff we produce. We do all the downtown Water Street Oyster Bar, Food Company, Executive Surf Club, all that. What they do is you've got growers that sell different things. Like all of these seeds, they come from different farms. You know, the squash comes from different farms, then the melons, then the onions, you know. So we get a broker, and the broker tracks all that stuff down. And he gets it, we tell him what we want. He gets a truck set up, you know, one of the 18-wheelers, and gets the stuff that we need, gets it off on the truck, and then gets it here. When it's here, the day that it comes, in 2 days, it's all gone. So this is kind of like a stopping point before it gets to the restaurant.
Okay,
and then that's it, you know. We do some of the grocery stores, like the Jalisco grocery stores and things like that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask. If they do grocery stores.
If you ever go into an H-E-B, the sushi bars that are in there, we do all of their avocados and stuff because they've got a contract with H-E-B and they don't get anything with H-E-B for some reason. So we just kind of get the stuff in and ship it out immediately. You know, produce is very delicate. So you got to get it in and move it out, and then the restaurants have to use it. In other words, once it goes into the restaurant, we're at the last phase. You know, I have an article at home that I did a report. I go to and 40% of all produce that's grown is lost before it reaches the table. So that shows you how fragile it is. So that also drives the cost. So the more fragile the produce, the more expensive it is. That's why stuff like strawberries are really expensive because berries are real fragile. The loss is real high. So the name of the game is to move it as fast as possible. Right. Potatoes is about the only thing that potatoes and onions that last any significant amount of time. Yeah. Hey Paul, you know where Farmer Frank's farm is at? Where's it at? Cavoli. So, you know, that guy, when he gets the crop into the farm range, I'll give you a really good deal. And, but, you know, the quality is a little bit different. I mean, you know, the places that chop stuff up for its own place, that's fine. But for places like Water Street, they would never give you this stuff. You know, it's just not as nice as the stuff that comes from Mexico or from California.
Yeah.
I avoid soy products because they've been so taken over by, you know, their GMOs that have been genetically modified so much. Corn is the same way. So, you know, we don't have any genetically modified foods or anything like that. but they're not organic, so I guarantee you at some point they've been hit with antibacterials. Antibiotics aren't really an issue unless it came through the chickens to the eggs.
Yeah.
But in produce and stuff, no. But almost everybody uses antibacterial. Matter of fact, what a lot of people don't know is tomatoes, bananas, they're picked really, really green and then they gas them. That gassing process is what starts the ripening process. So whatever chemicals are in the gassing process, you can get from tomatoes and bananas.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, wild fish, we're very fortunate that in the world of seafood, we have wild fish available. When you look at produce and meat and you go to the supermarket, everything's farm raised. Right? So some people come in and say, oh, I don't want anything farm raised. And I'm like, oh, I guess you don't eat produce, you don't eat meat. Oh, of course I eat produce and meat. Well, that's all farm too. We didn't start farming fish until about 1980. The Chinese were doing carp and a few things like that for centuries, but really it wasn't until the late 70s, early 80s that Luigi started farm raising salmon, and that was the start of farm raising seafood. So we did make mistakes early on when we started farming fish. So the salmon farms, for example, were too close together. They put too many fish in a pen. They started having diseases. They had to use a lot of antibiotics. It caused too many fish part of it caused a lot of extra food being wasted and a lot of poop from the fish, and kind of ruined the benthos. So they've learned, instead of putting 5 farms in one bay, they put 1 farm in a bay, and they'll raise the fish for 18 months, and then they'll move the farm to another bay and let that bay go fallow for a year, and then they'll send it to another one. It's kind of like rotating crops. Now they don't have to use the antibiotics, they don't have to use as much, and they've gotten much better at farming seafood. So farm fish has gotten a black eye because we were kind of not good at it, but we've been learning very quickly, much faster. Produce took centuries before they knew how to rotate crops. We have the same problem with birding and that's So, farm-raised fish and wild. It's basically wild fish that you'll put in a cage or you'll put in a raise them, and then you feed them. And that's kind of how you raise a farm-raised fish. So they'll taste a lot like a wild fish will. Sometimes a little fattier because they feed, to grow them faster. So in the wild, sometimes they're starving. The fish go out, they find a school of herring, they eat them really good for a couple of days, and they're great, and then all of a sudden the herring's gone and they're starving for 2 days. So the only difference in farm and wild, for the most part, is going to be the farm fish is a little fattier than the wild fish.
Do y'all give them actual stuff that makes them grow faster? I know that y'all feed them a lot.
Well, the farms we're buying from, I don't think we have anything that has hormones or growth promoters.
Okay.
So some farms were doing that. They were putting stuff into the feed, HGH, that type of thing, or some type of growth hormone would be HGH, maybe a growth hormone, or growth promoters. We don't buy from many farms that do that. And most of them have gotten away from that, especially in the first world involved. So if you're getting farm fish from the United States, from Canada, from New Zealand, Australia, Norway, some of the more advanced countries, it's very closely monitored and much healthier than maybe some of the third world countries.
What do they feed them? I'm not sure.
In a fish farm? Well, it depends on the fish, because like tilapia, for example, they're omnivores. There's carnivores and there's herbivores. Right? Carnivores eat fish or crustaceans, things like that. Herbivores eat algae, plant algae, things like that. And so some fish, you can raise them just on algae. And tilapia is one of them. They can eat mostly algae. They don't need a whole lot of protein in their diet. Something like a salmon is, if you look at them, big sharp teeth. So they're used to eating other fish. So in that case, what they'll do is they'll catch like a wild menhaden, a wild sardine, or some kind of small forage fish, and they'll catch them. They'll usually dry them. They'll grind them up, and they turn them into like little pellets. They look like Purina cat chow. But the Purina's the only company that makes it. Instead of making cat chow, they make fish chow, and they'll add vitamins and nutrients to it, and then that's what they feed in pellet form to the fish in the farm.
Okay. So for a while, we read that they were giving them soybeans.
They can add some soybean, and that's one of the ways, because what they're trying to do is, one of the ways they look at sustainability of the fish is what's called a fish in, fish out ratio, or a feed conversion ratio. The 2-to-1. So what they don't want to do, it used to be salmon was a FCR, feed conversion ratio of 5-to-1. 5 pounds of feed make 1 pound of salmon. They've got it down to 2 pounds for 1. One of the ways they've done that is by making a better diet for each stage of their life, and they're much more efficient. So soy has protein in it, okay? And salmon, for example, need to have about 40% protein in their feed, right? So if you use all menhaden or all wild fish, one, is more expensive, two, it takes more pressure on the wild stocks. So if you can make that 30% of it, 30% is going to be wild fish and 10% soy, and still get the protein they need, it's going to produce, you're going to be able to produce that fish a little more economically and a little more sustainable. You don't want to use too much soy because then you start lowering like the omega-3s. So that's why people eat the salmon, because all the good omega-3s. Soy doesn't have omega-3 in it, where the wild fish will have omega-3. My farm salmon, when I first started getting them out of Norway in the early 80s, they were $4 or $5 a pound for the whole fish. The wild ones would be $1, $2 a pound, because the quality was so much better for farm raised. The wild quality has gotten better, and the farm raised quality is still very good. And from an intrinsic freshness value, farm raised fish is usually fresher. To address that one question, we don't add anything to any of our fish. We don't soak it, we don't treat it, we don't do anything to any of our products. The exception would be we get it already done. There's shrimp boats use sodium bisulfate, which retards melanosis or black spot. Cooked shrimp or P&D shrimp that are frozen have sodium triphosphate, and then the cold smoke on the cold smoke tuna. That's about it.
Okay. And if they do use that, I know that some of them had you said bisulfate. I know that some of them said that was in the ingredients. You have to put it in the ingredients.
Sulfates you have to, because sulfites or sulfates are an allergen to about 4% of the population. And anything that is added, you have to show as an ingredient. But that one you have to show in certain bowl size, type, or whatever, because it's an allergen for some people.
Okay.
And that's one reason why I brought it up.
The idea that GMOs have negative effects on humans is widely believed because of the errors farmers and scientists have made in the past. As GMOs biotechnology involved, the benefits increased too. However, the media coverage on transgenic DNA remained adverse. That being said, benefits such as lower cost of production, increased nutrition, and improved efficiency are being ignored. In most of the world, the labeling of GMOs is required, but in the United States, it is not. GMOs are fairly new in the biotechnology field, so the long-term effects are unknown, but the present benefits are clear. They're advantageous. If the U.S. required labeling of all GMOs, their overwhelming presence in the food market would make informing people about GMOs' effects necessary. If people were aware of their choices rather than deceived by media's bias, they would have the ability to make conscious decisions and not fall into the trap of propaganda. Overall, you don't truly know what you're eating until you've been informed. Are you informed? Do you know what you're eating? To get more information about GMOs, go to our Facebook link at facebook.com/GMO secrets and take our quiz to prove just how much you know.